Welcome, Sheila.
Thank you.
So I'm going to ask you the question that we ask all of our guests. Who is Sheila Boateng?
Hmm. Well, first and foremost, I'm a Ghanaian American. I'm generation immigrant, and I have just a deep love for music, art, and culture, and just life. I think I'm inspired by all those things.
Thank you for that. And you've built an impressive career working across film and television. What first inspired you to pursue costume design and styling, and when did you realize it could become a career?
Oh, my grandmother. Being in Ghana, my grandmother used to sell fabrics, and I used to go with her and, go with her to source the fabrics. And then I also go with her to, when she was talking to tailors and get outfits made. And this is when I was like literally 6, 7 years old. And then when
Oh,
she came, and then when we came to America, she came to America with us as well to take care of us. And she was still selling fabrics and designing stuff, and I really wanted to get into the fashion world. And being African, my parents were like, you have to be a doctor. I mean, which I was really smart. I mean, I'm still smart when I was younger, and I was just like, I would always just sit there and be like, at the coffee shops and be like, oh my God, look at this person's outfit. And I was like, I need to figure out how to work in that world. So when I saw Coming to America, I was like, oh my God, I just love seeing Africans in such a good light. Because before that, most of the times when we saw like Africa, it was always, it was like, something sad. It didn't show the royalty. So I was like, oh, I want to get into the film world and I want to change, I want to change, how the world sees Africa.
hmm
So
I love
I
that.
manifested it and it kind of worked out on both Black Panthers and other movies. Yeah. And also supporting the African diaspora. But people don't really know. I'm just like, okay, like, I'm doing a movie, like, can we help you with your brand? And it's just great to like see Africa in a great light.
Absolutely. And it worked out very well.
Yeah.
We would say watching from, the outside looking in. And I love that you reference your upbringing and wanting to tell African stories more authentically through clothing. That segues right into the next question we have for you, which is costume design plays such a powerful role in shaping a character's story, right? What does your creative process look like when you're translating a character from script to screen through clothing?
Oh, such an amazing question. I always start with research um, and character psychology. I look at the script and I ask questions like, who is this person? What are they hiding? What are they trying to communicate to the world? And clothing is basically an extension in real life, extension of like who we are emotionally and our background. From there, like you build references, you swatch if you're custom building things, you swatch at costume houses, and then you meet up with the team. Everything is collaborative. You meet up with the hair department, the makeup department. You work together to build this, and the producers and director. You work together to build this character together.
Clearly, you have a strong eye for style. So, how would you describe your personal style on set, and does it ever shift depending on the project that you're working on? And I'd add to that, are you inspired by the characters that you're working on to influence your own style, or do you take an entirely different approach?
It depends on like what I'm doing. Like if I'm an assistant costume designer on a show and I am, doing a fitting, I'll probably dress up more. But if I'm working on set and working 18 hours or 18 hours a day with a costume design, I'm probably gonna wear like a set outfit. But it
Mhm.
honestly depends on the environment. Some jobs you could dress up a little more. Some do jobs, like when I was in South Africa, we were in the jungles. So you gotta, wear the right clothes for that. So you're protected by snakes and, animals, and also the
Oh,
elements. So it just depends on the job. Yeah.
okay. And speaking of, depending on the job, you work with some renowned costume designers, including Ruth E. Carter, Jeffrey Kirkland, and Marlene Stewart. What's one piece of advice from them that has stayed with you throughout your career?
Well, one of my favorite mentors, of course, is Ruth Carter. She's amazing. When I first got into the industry, I was working at a costume house and I was very confident. I was working at Western Costume and I told her when I met her, I was like, I'm gonna work with you someday. And she laughed about it. But then 2 years later, working together. And I didn't even know we were going to be working on one of the biggest projects ever. And her greatest advice to me is always be yourself, be true to yourself. Because sometimes the industry can, they can try to put you in a box and tell you who you are. And, she always tells me, be yourself, you're gifted, don't hide. Sometimes I do like to hide, and just never give up.
What's one of the lessons that you learned early in your career that follows you to this day?
One of the lessons I learned in my career is you can have your own personality. You don't have to, try to copy someone. Again, like just be yourself, because sometimes this industry will be like, oh, you have to be this to like get ahead in life. You have to do this. It's like everyone has their own lane. And also don't let people tell you like you're not ready for something. Be, you know, just, everyone has their journey. Like me, like when I first started out, I saw people filming and I was just, I was in school and I'll be like, okay, let me just walk over to this filming thing and give my resume. And a lot of people wouldn't do that, but I did that. Or I'll talk to the security guard. And then I started doing background work, but I didn't want to be an actress. And then when I do background work, I'll have the outfits set up and be like, and I'll show the wardrobe department, oh, by the way, like, and they would like my outfits that I made up based on the background character they told me to play. And I'll be like, oh yeah, by the way, here's my resume. I would love to be your PA. So and all of my friends were laughing at me at the time. And they were like, you're the first generation in this industry. I'm like, but I'm still gonna get in. I'm still gonna get in the union. Don't worry about it. And I did it. You just can't listen to what people tell you. And then when you get in the industry, some people will be like, you don't deserve to do this movie right now. You should just continue just doing low budget. Just stay, don't, do your own lane. You don't ignore the outside voices. That's like one of the main things that I would tell people who are starting out, because that could, don't let that limit you. Need a Lulu, like they say, the young people say now.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I love I love that. I would like to ask a follow-up. How, I know you said to ignore the voices, but how did you also manage to continue to persevere in spite of people saying those things?
I mean, I still deal with it today, but I have I have a lot of good people that support me, and I just try to stay focused. I've always been that child that literally, even when I was little, I was always creative as a child. So I've always been the type like how I disturbed the piece was like, I was like, oh, I want to learn how to play the piano. I don't even know how to read notes, but I'm gonna learn how to play the piano. And I knew how to play the piano before reading notes, So I've always just had a strong foundation of like, I know who I am and I'm gonna continue pushing and I don't care what people tell me. Like people say who I am, like, yeah, they might be like, oh yeah, she was a shy girl. No, no, no. So I continue to just like, I try my best just to listen to like God, and you just feel it sometimes. You feel who you are. Even when you're trying to escape, like I try to escape, I wasn't trying to escape fashion, but even when I was working at Bloomingdale's, I had people come over and be like, can you, come over to my house and like, fix my closet and put an outfit together. So it was a calling, and fashion wasn't even something I thought I could make money off of.
Oh my God, that's incredible.
Yeah.
I'm glad you centered God and continue persevering. And you're here today with us, so I know we're definitely excited. You mentioned listening, having mentors, and I know you work, as we previously mentioned, with Ruth E. Carter, and she once said in an interview with Vanity Fair, quote, the most difficult part of being a costume designer is that in many ways you're also a psychologist and an art director. You're in the background and the foreground. How do you, Sheila, balance those different roles on set?
That is based on, yeah, she's definitely right, because you have to balance her quote is definitely accurate, because you have to balance what the director feels. You have to balance what the costume designer feels as an assistant costume designer. You're constantly balancing like the vision of the director, the needs of the actors, and the historic and creative contests, and also the practical realities of production. So it's just, and also how actors are connecting with the clothes and how the costume affects their performances. Like on Black Panther, like on our Marvel projects, you have to make sure things are four-way stretch. On Michael, we had to make sure we had, I'm the main assistant costume designer, and I manage like, all the costumes that are getting made and manage the vendors. So I have to make sure there's a gusset because he's kicking, and make sure Jafar is comfortable. Like, so all of those elements are important.
That is important. And when we see the movie, we don't, I know me with the untrained eye, I don't see all those elements and all the work that goes into a kind of costume design and allowing a performer to, get fully into character. So this is like interesting learning this from. Speaking of Michael, let's talk about Michael, the movie. What was your initial reaction when you found out you'd be working as assistant costume designer on the project, which is now a history-making project on its way to earning 1 billion, worldwide? What does that feel like? What does it feel like now, and what did it feel like when you first got the call?
So originally, I was taking a break from being an assistant costume designer because I do take breaks, okay? Because that is, I'm just gonna be honest, that job is very hard. Like you sometimes, depending on the project, you sometimes lose yourself. You don't have time to take care of yourself. And previously, before Michael Jackson, I was working in Prague. I was working on Foundation as assistant costume designer. So I wanted to take a break and just be a buyer because that's how I started out, just shopping, dealing with vendors, getting free stuff for the show. So when I came on Michael, they're like, hey, we need a buyer. And I was like, okay, cool. I want to take a break from, all these responsibilities and then shop and have fun, because I'm good at that. It's natural. And I'm also good at ACDing. And then I guess 3 weeks coming into the project, the designer came up to me and was like, hey, like, I noticed that you're like really good at managing custom made pieces and sourcing and dealing with the vendors and getting things made properly, and that you have a lot of contacts internationally and also in LA. Do you want to be a costume designer? No, sorry, an assistant costume designer on this show? And I was like, I just worked on a long project, and I usually like taking breaks in between. Like I just want to, continue being a buyer. But
Right.
but the supervisor and the designer kept, I was basically doing the assistant costume designer job, and they're like, but we really think we need you because you worked with Swarovski before, you know how to get costumes made from all of these vendors, you're good at research. We need you. I'm like, okay, I'll do it. So I did it. So I'm glad I did it. And within that time, I was also getting a job to work in Italy. I got a call to work in Italy as a stylist just for shop with Denzel. That was for Gladiator. But I ended up, staying on Michael, which I worked with Denzel before. He's amazing. So I ended up staying on Michael because I was like, I don't want to travel. I kind of want to stay in my apartment because I moved and then I had to travel to Prague and Spain. And I'm like, I just want to stay in LA, So I was like, let me just stick to the job. And she was like, yeah, it'll be good for you. And then I ended up with the assistant costume job position. And it was a lot, but it showed me that, I'm a great leader and I was working with people that I've never worked with before. Some people weren't really like privy to the custom made area like I am, coming from like the Marvel and Star Wars background. A lot of them were like shoppers instead of like custom made pieces or sourcing fabrics, and I do both. So it was a lot of like, sometimes I would say kind of training and also doing my own job, which sometimes was difficult, but it was all worth it because we all like Michael, and I really wanted this to be like the costumes to be as authentic as possible.
Sheila, how difficult is it to remain historically accurate while balancing creative interpretation, especially in a film like Michael?
Now there's better pictures, but when we were doing the movie, some of the images that I was researching from like the early 60s, it was hard to see the actual pattern. So I had to work with this place called My Prince in LA. He's amazing. Steven works there. He had to work and try to figure out like how the pattern looks. But now the pictures are like, they look better. So that was kind of hard as well. And then sometimes like you can't be historically accurate because you also have to make sure that the actor or the actress is comfortable within their clothes, because they're the ones that are playing the character. But we tried our best. And then sometimes there's also time limits, This project was a lot of like shifting schedules. And so sometimes, you're supposed to be shooting something 3 months ago and they're like, oh no, we're shooting this next week. So you got to get this done now. So you just gotta go with the flow, stay calm as much as possible, and also always have a backup planning like I did. I mean, especially the Grammy jacket. I have like a huge story about the Grammy jacket. But I'm glad that jacket made it because I'm glad that I listened to my intuition because that would have been something else.
Yeah. In addition to Jafar's performance, the costuming while I was watching it in the theater, I was just like, oh my God, like it really helped to bring Michael, the character, and the King of Pop to life in a way that felt so surreal watching it in the theater for me. It didn't feel like I'm watching someone imitating the King of Pop. It felt like this is the King of Pop, and I'm watching it all over again. So to hear you tell that story is amazing.
And Jafar had like, I worked with Levi's, Florisham, JH Bass. So we had, when we worked with Levi's, we had jeans in his like in his current size, and then also the size, like, you know, because he lost a lot of weight. So you have to make sure you buy a size range of stuff when you work with actors. And then also a lot of people don't know this. When you work with dancers or performers, you have to have rehearsal outfits as well. So they get comfortable before the costumes are made, they get comfortable with how the costume might feel. So that's something that you also have to think about as an assistant or a costume designer. You got to think about creating those, or, you know, pulling something from the costume houses that are similar to what you're going to make.
So Jafar Jackson has received critical acclaim for his portrayal of Michael. And you spoke on it already, but if you could just say more, what was the process of bringing Michael Jackson to life through costume? And specifically, if you want to share the story about the Granny jacket, you referenced it earlier.
So I was blessed to actually get to see Michael's actual clothes. His estate really allowed us to, you know, they allowed me and the designer to see his glove, his bad jacket. We took pictures. I touched it, but I was wearing a glove, of course. So it felt like you could feel his spirit. And then meeting Jafar for the first time, we met Jafar at, you know, Michael's old childhood home, and you can tell he was really embodying the character. You could feel Michael's spirit. I remember we were measuring his head for a hat and like measuring his body, and the door kept slamming, and we were like, what's going on? Like, and the door was pretty heavy. So we felt Michael's spirit. And Jafar, he's an amazing actor. I think the first thing he told us, like, yeah, I'm sleeping on the floor just like Michael used to do. Wow, I don't know, he just really embodied that like hard work. And we went through a lot of shoes with Jafar because, you know, he's dancing 24/7, and thank God I bought a lot of shoes, and so he can like rehearse in them. And then we bought shoes that were like, some shoes are a slightly smaller size, and then some shoes that were a little bit bigger. So his shoes, you know, so he can perform. So you got to think about all of that stuff. But yeah.
That's cool. I heard Jafar say in previous interviews how he would rehearse in a smaller size leather shoe because leather expands over time. So hearing you give the backstory to like why you brought different size shoes and why it was so necessary.
And we also had to hire a cobbler to like also like see how his, you know, to put some insoles and make sure it protects his toes. Yeah, as much as possible. We try to make him feel as much as comfortable as much as possible, because he was training so hard. Even when he was sick, sometimes he would be like, I just want to continue doing it because Michael would do it. Yeah, so it was, yeah.
Okay, how was your approach different when you were designing for younger Michael Giuliano, Baldi, and the Jackson family versus Jafar's version of Michael?
Oh my God, Giuliano was so fun. He just came in the first day of fitting. He just came in with this just like burst of energy, dancing. I was like, yo, here's your next chain. He would just be dancing. He really loved his costumes. I think the younger years required more of a softer and grounded look approach, just reflecting the time of the family and the sort of like innocence of it and the Motown era influences. I feel like Jafar's was more expand on his larger than life iconography. But yeah, with Julian, it was just like making sure he's comfortable, making sure every costume he tried on, he was seeing how he moved in it, especially the vest with the fringe, you know. And he loved his costumes. He loved dressing up. It was so fun to work with him and the other kids.
Oh.
You can come into work tired, only on 2 hours of sleep, and then he'll just start dancing and running around, and it was fun.
Sound like y'all had a lot of fun on set overall.
Yeah, we did. It's tiresome, but everyone was so serious about getting this movie right and working together.
What did you learn about Michael Jackson through the collaboration with the Jackson family that surprised you?
I don't know, because I've been such a Michael lover like my whole life. So I'm trying to think about,
Understood.
that's such a good question. No, I'm trying to think. No, because I'm such a, oh,
No,
I mean, what I learned, I think one thing I learned about like the KFC thing, like I didn't know he liked eating KFC.
I didn't know that
I
either.
didn't know like after he, after that Pepsi incident, that's when he was a vegetarian all his life, most of his whole life. And then after that Pepsi incident, he started enjoying KFC and he liked eating it for, sometimes lunch, breakfast, and dinner. So that's something that was surprised because I mean, that's something that I thought was, I don't know if that's true, but that's something that someone said. But yeah, I was surprised about that.
What's the most intense or high pressure day you've experienced on set, and how did you navigate it?
Ooh, there was a lot of those because there was a lot of quick changes. I mean, if I can speak on this, the Grammy jacket.
Okay.
Um, okay, so the Grammy jacket, when I first started the show, I was already thinking about the Grammy jacket early on. And I go to England a lot. So I did my research like months before they shot the Grammy scene, which was in March, which originally it was supposed to be shot in, I think late April to May of that
Mhm.
year. I became an assistant costume designer. So when I went to England in December, I was like, let me research where Michael got his military jackets made. And I was off, but I was like, I'm already in England. So let me go to Handlock and Key. And I met up with them and I started discussing the Grammy jacket right away. And I know like, the jacket wouldn't be seen, like it wouldn't be shot in 5 months, but knowing me, like I want to think ahead just to be
Right.
safe. I know how schedules change constantly. So I think within like 2 months, I was already like, sourcing it, sourcing the fabric for it. They made the jacket. First, the jacket came in pieces and they shipped it to us. Originally, one of the persons wanted to get one of their vendors in New York to make it. He said he
Mhm.
promised that he would have it done. But unfortunately, they switched the schedule. So I had mines that I got made in England, and I remember originally they were like, "You should return it. We're going to use the guy in New York." Um, because we have a good relationship with him. But I was like, no, I'm not going to return this. I'm going to keep these pieces just in case. And I know I should have listened, but I was like, something was like, do not do it. Because
Mm.
this
Mhm.
project is, they changed the schedule and then they moved the Grammy scene to like early, like to March. And then, the designer was like, oh my God, they just moved it. What are we going to do? Can you call the New York vendor to see if, the costumes are ready? I called him. He was like, no, I can't have it done. It's not going to be done. And I was like, well, I told the designer, well, I have something to tell you. And she's like, what? I'm like, well, I actually kept the one from London. We just got to put it together. That's what I told
Mhm.
her. And she's like, you did? I'm like, yes, I did. Because I just had a feeling just in case the schedule was changed, and she was like, okay, that's, so like, let's fix this. I'm like, okay, there's a tailor in downtown, Bubba, let's go to him, Jenga Bubba, and he'll put it together for us. And, the
Mhm.
designer took it there because I was doing some fittings and we got the jacket made and we had like 4 days to shoot it and it was there.
Amazing.
Well, I'm glad I listened to my intuition because sometimes like being an assistant or general, just so you have to have a backup plan, especially in the film industry. Things change so fast. And I think, yeah, you can't just have one person making such an intricate costume because that costume is all hand beaded and it takes like
Wow.
4 to 8 weeks to make that costume. So
Wow.
something in my heart was like, just listen. Every time I listen to my intuition, it is right. And I was like, I'm just gonna hide it. Even the designer's like, yeah, I'm just gonna go with the New York. I'm like, no, no, no. Like, I'm gonna hide this. And then just in case we have a backup plan, we just got to put it together. And it's all, yeah. So that worked out. And that was a very intense day. But
That's amazing.
yeah, that's
As
what part of being an ACD is. You got to think, an assistant costume, you got to think ahead. And also being a costume designer, just think ahead. And even though the schedule might be like, you're going to shoot this day, but just still have everything ready. That's how I've been trained.
and that's good advice for other future costume designers or current ones as well. As a Ghanaian American creative, how does your culture background influence your design choices or perspective in the costume world?
Like I know she's Nigerian, but Patricia Bright once said, I love my Nigerian sisters, rich in color, rich in life. I love
Mhm.
color. My background influences how I see color and texture and storytelling, and also my identity growing between cultures. The American culture and also my Ghanaian culture gave me an appreciation of like both sides of my personal fashion expression of cultural history. And I also love like other cultures. Like I've always been someone who has friends from all different backgrounds, and I'm just been like a historian in that aspect. So that's how it influenced me, like even life. And just today, like if I go walking or go to a coffee shop, I'm influenced by that, like looking at people at the coffee shop, like what are they wearing in downtown, or what are they wearing in Silver Lake, or what are they wearing in Glendale, or what are they wearing in New York, you know? I think everything, including my culture, influences me, even the seasons.
Beautiful.
What advice would you give to aspiring costume designers, especially those from underrepresented backgrounds trying to break into the industry?
Don't give up, because there have been a lot of people that told me to give up, especially when I was doing background, because I was trying to be the Trojan horse to get into the wardrobe costume department. I met some people that were like, you know, you're not going to make it in LA, you know, you just have to go to Atlanta, because Atlanta, that's where you will succeed, if you know what I mean. But I don't think you'll make it in LA, because there's not a lot of us in LA that, you know, can do high budget movies. So, you know, go to Atlanta. And I was like, and I took that in. I was like, oh, okay. I'm gonna make it in LA. I'm gonna make sure I'm
That's right.
2 Oscar winning, and now this probably is possibly 3rd Oscar winning projects. I just don't listen to what people say. And they were gonna tell you, especially being a person of color and having a soft voice, they're gonna tell you like you don't deserve this right now. They're gonna tell you that, like you're too young. Don't listen. We all, again, we all have our own journeys, and ignore them. If you don't ignore them, then you won't succeed. But if you do ignore them and stay focused, and not see people as like, not see people, not, and, you know, not see people as like your just competition. You're your own competition. That's how you have to look at things.
I agree.
And I'm so glad you did not listen to those people. You
Yeah.
have the success you have, and inspiring the people you're inspiring and doing the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
So what does the future look like for you, and what kind of projects are you excited to take on next?
The future looks like I am going to get out the shadows of these big movies and be a costume designer. That's what I'm working on now. You know, I'm usually, you know, I have my Ghanaian humbleness, you know, that's why I respect a lot of Nigerians, because they're just like, you know, just like, you know, they're just so confident. And I'm confident too, but I just, you know, I just like hiding. But, you know, I'm kind of, I think the last couple of years, I'm kind of over hiding. You know, I finally made my Instagram public after years. So who I am. So I'm ready to start my role as a costume designer. You know, but in the meantime, I don't mind working with like amazing costume designers and helping their visions come to life. But that's my next role, and do more styling and commercial stuff.
Well, we're excited to see you in your future work.
Definitely. And you have no need to ever hide. I think it's so good you saying that you want to come out now, because there's so many little girls, you know what I mean? I used to always dress my daughter up, right? Now she goes and picks out her own pieces. You know what I mean? So you coming out and showing little Black girls, you know, of all different types of, you know, cultures, that it's possible, you know, is amazing. So
Thank you. It's hard, especially if you're kind of shy and you just like, you know, to be in your little books and fabrics and talk to the tailors. I'm like, I'm in the middle. So, but now I'm just like, I got to stop hiding. I've worked on these big projects. A lot of these African vendors I worked with on both Black Panthers, they don't know, like, I'm the one that was like researching the brands and bringing them out. So it's like, now I'm just like, I'm just going to come out.
Yes. Yes. You deserve to get that recognition, Sheila.
Thank you.
Absolutely. That's why we're so excited to spotlight you on our platform. It was such a pleasure speaking with you. Good luck in everything. Congratulations on everything. You know, we're both really excited to have learned so much about you. And now I'm going to look at movies differently moving forward with knowing all of the information you shared with us.
I never would have thought of all the things that you mentioned, like, you know, different outfits to, you know, practice in versus the actual different sizes, you know. Yeah. So.
Because you never know when you're on sets. People grow, people lose weight. So you just have to be prepared for all of that. They might give you their measurements and you're going to see them like a month later. And, you know, sometimes when you're starting off as a shopper, because I started off working in the industry as a set customer first, but I've always done styling and buying before that. But I've noticed that, you know, people's bodies change and you just have to make sure you're prepared for that change. It's all about preparation.
Well, thank you so much, Sheila, for your time. We are so excited you decided to join us. And
definitely, again, thank you.
I was nervous, but thank you. I was like, because
I was nervous too.
We all nervous on this.
It's like my second interview. I'm just like, okay, I just need to just come out.
Oh, if you ever need anything from the Black Script, you reach out to us, reach out to Dom, and let us know, and write-ups or anything like that, and we got you, okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.